Well, did Donald Trump win or lose in California in the lawsuit about the California National Guard? Did Gavin Newsom win or lose in the lawsuit? Where are we with the appellate case? Why is mainstream media continuing to report that there is a stay about everything in the case when that is not true? What's just happened recently, including in the last 24 hours, that helps the continued case before Judge Breyer that's going to hearing next week on the preliminary injunction? How do you reconcile all of these things? Who's around to explain it? And what will the Supreme Court do next? Oh, that's a breathless way of saying you need to watch Unprecedented, only on Legal AF with Dina Doll and me, Michael Popok. Here's a clip where we untangle that mess. Let me turn it over to Dina. Dina, talk to the audience about the lawsuit brought by your great state of California, Rob Bonta, your Attorney General, Gavin Newsom, your governor, and why it matters to our way of life, not just California, and then tie it into an update about the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals stepping in.
Yeah, and the attack on our Senator Alex Padilla.
How could I leave that out? Sorry, go ahead.
Because here's the thing is Alex Padilla he doesn't say much, but when he says something, he's like the most sincere person ever. He is not the viral moment person out there trying to get the clips, right? So the fact that this happened to him is so beyond shocking, so awful. That video is like, there's so few things that still shock me. This was very shocking.
How about Donald Trump saying, well, it's a good reason he got picked up. Nobody knows him and he looks like an immigrant. How about that?
He should sue. I think he should sue for an unlawful detainment. Honestly, that's what they would do. We need to start going on offense. He was pushed to the ground and arrested for no reason, and he should sue. I mean, the fact is that he was trying to ask a question right when Secretary Kristi Noem had the audacity to say that she was trying to liberate Angelinos, right? Which I am one. And we voted for Karen Bass and we voted for Gavin Newsom. We did not vote for Donald Trump.
Or for Kristi Noem.
So we don't need liberating from them. And so for our own senator, again, who we voted for, to want to break in and say something exactly in that moment, he was just standing up for his constituents. And I think he should sue and has honestly a very good case for that. And in terms of the filing, as everybody has said, Newsom and Karen Bass, we are the grand experiment. I think this is interesting because we talked about this before too, right? How Governor Abbott was trying to basically have his own immigration policy in Texas, right? He put up the fencing and the river and all that kind of stuff, despite the fact that immigration policy is really clearly in federal government. But he had said Biden wasn't doing enough for 4 years. DeSantis was sending planes, right? And Biden wasn't doing enough. But Trump sends ICE to Los Angeles. Why isn't he sending it to his buddies Abbott and DeSantis, right? I mean, so this is clearly about Trump running a show. California is an experiment. How far will the American public and the courts allow me to militarize the streets of our country? So Judge Breyer, who's the one that was assigned the case and is the brother of the former Supreme Court Justice Breyer, who is a liberal legend. When he stepped down, he was replaced by Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, another legend in the making. So wow, talk about two very smart siblings. I bet Charles Breyer, the one who has this case, might have thought his name wasn't going to be in the history books, let's say, but talk about having
one of the 83. He just snuck it in.
83, exactly, just snuck it in. I mean, wow. Talk about an incredibly important case. His opinion, 30 plus page opinion, just about the restraining order was very well thought out, very well backed. Gavin Newsom is lucky in the fact that we have a state and even a Ninth Circuit that is going to be reasoned in their approach and their evaluation. And so what happened was Governor Newsom basically said that Trump could not federalize the National Guard because it didn't qualify under the statute. The statutory authority basically has to have there be a rebellion or they can't execute federal laws. And then they have to go through the governor. And he didn't do that. He also said that Trump couldn't send in Marines into Los Angeles. And Judge Breyer issued a temporary restraining order saying that Newsom, he interestingly gave Newsom a little bit more than what he wanted and a little bit less than what he wanted, because Newsom in his restraining order itself had actually asked the judge to just limit the use of the National Guard to protecting federal buildings. His kind of motion had to do with just banning him from federalizing at all, but there's just the temporary restraining order had to do with limiting it to federal buildings. And the judge said, banned it outright from federalizing the National Guard. But he didn't address the Marines because the Marines were not yet on the street. And courts usually wait until something is happening before reviewing it because, for all you know, Trump could maybe never send the Marines, right? So it was not ripe yet, as you say. It wasn't quite ready for review. But I thought that really interesting. And then just procedurally, how it goes and how the Supreme Court, this is a Supreme Court show, how it ties in is, as you said, the three panel Ninth Circuit basically stayed the temporary restraining order, which means status quo. Trump can still have the federalized National Guard. They are going to be looking at it now on Tuesday. And then what is going to happen is if they rule in favor of either party, this is going to get appealed again. It could get appealed to the entire Ninth Circuit panel, or somebody could take it straight to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, I'm sure you agree with this, Popok, is going to get this. One of these parties is going to get this. It's just a matter of how quickly the Supreme Court takes a look at this question.
Yeah, the stay issue is interesting because, Donald Trump pulled a good panel for him, all things being equal, in the Ninth Circuit. Two that were appointed by Donald Trump, on the 9th. One who's a sort of a moderate, and the other one's just MAGA, and a Biden appointee. But they all agreed that they're going to do this administrative stay for at least the next 4 days to get us to Tuesday with a hearing. But the only issue for Tuesday, to be clear to our audience, is whether the stay should be in place throughout the duration of the appeal on the merits, the underlying merits, or not. And so, but they do have to touch on merits because in order to enter the stay, I don't mean the administrative stay, which is in place now. I mean the permanent stay, the appellate stay that they're considering for Thursday. But in order to do that, they got to look at the merits and see, they kind of look under the hood and decide whether there's a likelihood of success on the merits in terms of each other's arguments. So even though we say it's procedural and it's not on the merits, it is on the merits because they're looking at the merits. And if they think Trump has a better argument under 10 USC 12406, which is also known as the Militia Act of 1903, and in declaring a rebellion when no such thing is going on, or as I liked, one of my favorite parts of Judge Breyer's decision is what he said, I don't know, throwing water bottles and mangoes. I don't think that's a rebellion. He literally said water bottles, chairs, and mangoes is not an armed rebellion as that term has ever been used, including in 1903. I knew he took special delight typing in the word mangoes. So, right.
It's Los Angeles.
Yeah. It just shows you how ridiculous the rebellion. And then he took on, and this is the other issue for the court to determine whether Donald Trump keeps taking this position over and over again in various courts, that whatever he does with any kind of warlike power or emergency power is not reviewable by a federal court, that he stands above the law, that it's not, we use the term justiciable. It's not justiciable. And it's ridiculous because in every judge that he's run that argument by has said, Trump appointed or not, has said the exact same thing, which is no, you do you. But we have a role as a federal court to provide oversight. And if you are relying on a statute that empowers you, then you have to color within the lines of that statute. And if you don't, we're the ones that say you colored outside the lines. So you want to declare a rebellion, then somebody else is going to look over your shoulder to say whether that was right or wrong. Trump's like, no, I get to declare an enemy incursion for Alien Enemies Act. I get to declare a rebellion. And Judge Breyer, what I liked about it is how he just sort of called it out, just called it out and said, it is disturbing to see an executive branch, a president, try to convert innocent First Amendment protest into a rebellion in order to quash it.
Mm-hmm.
And even if there's some bad apples, to continue our fruit metaphors, even if there's some bad apples within the First Amendment proper protest, and they step out of First Amendment protection because they get violent, that doesn't convert through some sort of alchemy the protest into a rebellion in order to put your jack-footed boot on it. And that's Breyer. The panel will have to see. Their only ruling is going to be thumbs up, thumbs down on the stay. If they rule for the stay, it's effectively giving Donald Trump the win because that appeal could last 3, 4, 6 months or a year. There's no limit on how long this appellate court could take. The loser of that, let's just play this out. If Trump loses, he definitely files a petition, emergency petition number 21 or whatever it is, with the United States Supreme Court. And then I want to ask you what you think this court does with this abuse of power in their analysis. If the California loses on a stay, it's a little trickier. I mean, they can ask for an emergency appeal on the issue of the stay, but having lost the stay at the with the appellate court, they got a tough road to hoe with the Supreme Court. Although the Supreme Court, as Ketanji Brown Jackson has said, don't seem to give a crap whether the lower court grants a stay or not. It is supposed to be a factor as to whether they're going to uphold it or not, but they reject it every time. You know, and Ketanji Brown Jackson is always the one, but the lower court stayed. Why are we not giving any credence to that? And they're not. They're not. So what do you think the Supreme Court does? We know where the unitary presidential model people are. What do they do with this? The two there's only two ways. I mean, there's only one way to do this. He hasn't declared under the Insurrection Act, right? So it's the Militia Act of 1903 with 3 triggering events and a governor involvement. That's the statute. And then there's the 10th Amendment, which says state sovereignty has to be respected and people's sovereignty have to be respected for everything that's not in the Constitution or not part of the federal remit pursuant to Congress. So what do they do?
So I think the question isn't whether or not Congress has congressional, whether or not the statutory language can limit Trump's ability to send Marines on the street. I think it's going to be that only Congress can declare war under its Article 1 power. And you put that up against his being commander in chief during such war. And then it becomes, it's interesting because Congress kind of did this authorization, right? The never ending war authorization after 9/11. I think that could come into play. And maybe it's time to repeal that. Because if that really is this idea that they could go to war at any time, but to me, this is, I think, how the Supreme Court is going to look at it. I don't think we can feel safe and secure with how the statutory language is written. They're going to be going like constitutional provision against constitutional provision.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think at the end of the day, if I'm the state and I lose on the motion for stay, I'm not sure I take up an emergency application on the stay. I think I try to convince the Ninth Circuit to do fast briefing. I get a substantive ruling on the appeal. It's only going to be on the non-posse comitatus, non-military troops on the ground issue, but it's still important. I don't know. It's going to be a procedural. It's going to be the appellate geniuses for California trying to figure out how to best set this case up for success, not failure. But yes, I could definitely see the case taking on a war footing when it really doesn't deserve that. It's really a militia commandeering of the National Guard analysis. But whenever they reverse engineer the right wing reverse engineers everything. They'll say, "What do we want to have happen? We want Trump to successfully have done what he did and give him the power to do that. How do we do that? Oh, let's go down this route. Let's go to textualism. Let's go to originalism. Let's read out words. Let's overturn precedent." That's how they get there and back into it. So look,
and one thing just before we move on, because I was thinking, I don't know what you think about this, Popok, but we talk about, I feel like on Midas and Legal AF, we're really good about pointing out Trump's cognitive issues, right? Even though most media kind of they think oh, whatever, we're not going to cover it anymore. But his when he said on his post Saturday night, things have calmed down and the National Guard hadn't even gone yet. And then he said in the Oval Office at some point later that there were so many deaths. That's why he had to send in the National Guard. Newsom should be citing that, right? Bonta needs to be citing that in their filings because, the DOJ is trying to say it's his judgment. And I think this is the time to say that he is incapable of a good judgment and use his own statements against him.
His judgment's impaired. Welcome back. You're on Legal AF. Take a receipt. Hit the free subscribe button now more than ever. Maybe you were able to get on the streets with your fellow concerned citizens and protest Donald Trump's fascism with the No King's Day March. Maybe you weren't able to do all of that. Maybe your contribution is to learn more about the intersection of law and politics and your role in it here on Legal AF. Either way, you're in a fellowship, right? You're part of our movement. We're part of yours. Take a moment, hit the free subscribe button. Help us continue to bring you programming just like this at the intersection of law and politics. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.